Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Middle East Forum webinar. My name is Winfield Myers. I'm the director of Campus Watch, and I'm very pleased to welcome our guest today, Professor David Cook of Rice University. David, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
I'm very happy to be here myself. Thank you.
David is professor of religion at Rice University in Houston. His academic specializations include early Islamic history and development, Muslim apocalyptic literature, and radical Islam. Among his several books are this, which I will plug happily, Understanding Jihad, an outstanding work, along with contemporary Muslim apocalyptic literature, and with Olivia Allison, Understanding and Addressing Suicide Attacks. He also wrote back in 1998 a very prescient article for the Middle East Quarterly, the forum's own journal, titled Muslim Fears of the Year 2000. David is a member of the Campus Watch Advisory Board, earned his BA at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and his MA and PhD at the University of Chicago. So again, we're really pleased to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about some of the problems of teaching about the history of Islam in the modern university. Those who are watching and those who keep up with the Middle East Forum and Campus Watch are aware that sometimes people who try their best to teach rigorously, honestly about the history of the Middle East, the history of Islam, and to be sure, other topics as well throughout the academy, can run into very real problems, both with their deans and department heads, with apologists, both on campus and off, sometimes all three, and that it can have professionally deleterious effects on their career. David, let's just start. Tell us, what are some of the principal challenges that you find in your day-to-day life simply teaching about the history of Islam in a fine university like Rice?
Well, to start off, I have to say, honestly, I can't really complain on a personal level. You know, like I agree, you know, I feel very strongly in agreement that this is a major problem, but I will say, you know, in order to not sound like a whiner, I personally am not, you know, touched by it hugely. I know, you know, from my grad students and other, you know, graduates and stuff that I'm considered to be an Islamophobe, you know, which of course I really, you know, I have major problems with that term in any case.
Sure.
But, you know, I have to admit, I mean, I view myself as Islamocritical, but I try and maintain a very sympathetic relationship with Muslims on a teaching level. And for me, this happens to be the winning formula. You know, like the place where I feel like I get problems are the fact that many times my books have to go through hostile reviews, especially at the pre-publishing level, you know, where I'll oftentimes be accused of being an Orientalist or hating Islam, or you should have seen the reviews from Understanding Jihad. They were quite a pleasure to read. You know, I was, quote, the worst type of Orientalist and all sorts of different other things. But
well, that's exactly the kind of stuff I'm thinking about, is that the journals, the university presses, academic conferences can be pretty rough on a guy like you, can they not?
Well, I have to admit, you know, again, I feel like I've pretty much weathered that. You know, like there's a lot of times where I won't get invited to various different things, or at least I can suspect that. Mm-hmm. But when I do, you know, I don't take anything from anybody, and I'll make sure that, you know, that I give as good as I get. So I haven't really found. On the other hand, I'm not really a member of Mesa anymore. You know, like Mesa, sure. I find is just beyond the pale. I can't deal with it. So I don't know what would happen if I, you know, walked through that. You know, like I know that for one of my grad students studies African Islam, and he's told me that, you know, going to African Islamic gatherings and stuff, you know, random people will just come up to him and say, "Do you know your advisor is an Islamophobe?" And, you know, he'll say, "No, he's not that," because, you know, I mean, he's actually a Muslim himself. And it's like, no, he's not. So Yeah, honestly, I
Yeah,
can't say that I really suffer from it that much, but in general, Rice is a pretty moderate university.
right,
It's
right.
not part
Well, you
of,
are a full professor. I
and
didn't
I'm a
you,
full professor,
right.
and
So it didn't
so
stop your climb.
I don't know, I mean, I'm not, that's the reason why I don't feel like I can really whine about it. I can say that I believe that this is a major problem for up and coming students of the Middle East. That's where I really have noticed, like a lot of different
But
problems.
talk about that, please. Expand it and be well beyond your campus to the profession as a whole.
Yeah. So here we have to look at two different categories, and first, and it's sad to say, but I think that one of the results of Saidian critique of my field has been that Jewish students are more reluctant to actually study the world of Islam.
Hmm.
Um,
Referring to Edward Said, author of 1978 Orientalism, which turned the
yes.
field upside down and called all of his predecessors and peers basically racists and Orientalists, meaning that they viewed Islam from a superior mode, a Western imperialist mode, and
Yeah, I mean, basically that sums it up.
yeah,
and that influence continues to this very day,
Mhm.
even though Said is long passed on. His methodologies are extremely prevalent inside Middle Eastern studies, inside anthropology, inside
Mhm.
English,
Yeah.
where it is difficult to go through them without. It's difficult for people who don't agree with that to actually develop the thick skin that they need in order to weather all the way through it. And that's the thing that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to meet with you today is I really wanted to make a plea for people to do just that. And I can't say, that it's an easy thing to want to do, because I know from personal experience and friends' experience and students and grad students' experience that it's not. I mean, you have to go through a lot of insults. A lot of times you have to swallow your tongue and,
To develop very thick skin, I would think.
and develop very thick skin, so, but I believe that the only way to recover the profession is for people to actually go through that and to weather the storm and to come out on the other side. And, as I say, it's not an easy thing to want to do. There's greener fields everywhere. You won't make very much money being in academia. And sometimes when you
Yeah.
feel like all the different stuff that you suffered in order to get through there, you think, really, my friends are making 10 times as much as I am,
Yeah, yeah, I
in a
don't.
policy institute. But yeah, I would like to, to plead with those, who of a younger generation to consider that, because I have to say honestly, with all the politically correct and Saidian things and stuff, this is still an incredibly rewarding field. I have no regrets. The study of Islam is interesting, and on a personal level, I find it to be extremely rewarding. But again, I can't deny that I had to go through a lot of stuff in order to get to that particular
Right.
point where I can say
Sure.
that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's the plea that I would like to make. Yeah. So frankly, I applaud the creation of other different organizations that can kind of counter
Mhm.
the standard narratives and so forth. I believe that it's necessary for those of a younger generation to actually see on the ground, especially. I find actually that one of the most useful things in preventing people from critiquing me is just the fact that I've traveled so much more than they have. I've actually seen a lot more than they have. Some people have come up to me and be like, you're an Islamophobe and stuff, and and then all of a sudden they'll realize, yeah, actually I've been to, like a lot of places and everything, and I've seen the places and I've, walked the walk and talked the talk and stuff, and all of a sudden then they shut up. Yeah, but you do have to go through a lot of stuff in order to, in order to get to that particular point.
Are
So
there some programs that students, either undergrad or graduate, should look at more closely than others for getting through that? Some universities, including,
Well, personally, I
feel free to
feel
mention
like,
your own too, of course. So.
yeah. I mean, obviously, I do, especially now that I've gotten to be full professor and stuff, I do look more carefully at those people who I believe, I think can make a difference in the field, to try and train them and, to put them out. Honestly, I believe that, two of the major, and I still call them Orientalist, but, the places that are traditional, like the University of Chicago and Princeton, I think that it's possible to actually go through them, their Middle Eastern studies, and actually come out as a reasonable person, but there's definitely certain universities where, yeah, it's just hopeless, like I can't say that I would even look at somebody that's coming out of Columbia. It's just, it's over.
Yeah. And Georgetown, we always go after too.
Yeah, Georgetown as well. I know that that certain of the people there in Georgetown revile my name, and I've tangled with them.
The badge of honor. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any major problems with it. But yeah, there's other different universities that I could name, but mainly it's just single people. That
right.
And, so once again, I just honestly have to say to the audience, this is something that can be changed. It is not actually something that is immutable. 20, 30, 40 years ago, the field was not actually like this. And it can be different in the future. Right now, in my opinion, yes, it is at a low point. And we're seeing that not just in Islamic studies, but in a lot of places, like Princeton, setting aside its Latin and Greek requirements for its classical department.
Yeah, preposterous. The heart of the discipline. Yeah.
I don't know what to say to something like that. If somebody told me to do the same to Arabic, and you could, because Arabic is just as racist a language as Latin and Greek is. Yeah. It'd be like ripping my beating heart out of my chest. I can't imagine doing something like that. But at any rate, having said that, I know that academia is at a low point right now. I can't deny it. As I say, I don't personally feel it that much. My colleagues, none of them, go after me in any particular way. I do have, certain detractors here at Rice, but I don't think that it's possible to have opinions about anything and not have detractors. Sure. So, but it's God's mercy, that I don't have. I like to distinguish between two groups of people. The people that are, like on the other side, and then there's the people that are on the inquisitorial other side. And it's the people that are inquisitorial that I really cannot deal with. Sure.
Civil disagreement is one thing. Academic, that's what the entire edifice is built on, but it's another thing entirely, as you say, the inquisitorial side. Well, what can universities do, and can we expect them to do them? I mean, my take would be often the administrators are as bad as, if not worse than, some of the professors in pushing various schemes. And as we all know, administrators have many ways to hurt you if you're a faculty meeting member.
Administrators have many ways to hurt you.
Yeah, they do. So what can a lot of what we're talking about here comes down to academic freedom, doesn't it? And the freedom to be controversial, as controversial is defined by the majority in academia today, which would be a position that you would take, for example, in your scholarship. What can universities do, and what can people outside the universities do to encourage them to reform as necessary? It is donors, taxpayers, parents paying their tuition, students themselves. It's a huge question, I realize, but what are a few things do you think that are most important?
I mean, the thing that strikes me the most about those people who have successfully dealt with these problems is merely holding these guys to their own rules is sometimes the most useful. When you actually just say, hey, you know what, these are the rules that you laid down and you're not keeping them. That's sometimes actually the most useful. Because like in any oppositional framework, there is a group of people that is opposing you that there's no way that you're ever going to win over. Your real target is actually the vast majority of people who haven't really taken a side as yet. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that you really want to influence. Like I'm never going to win over those inquisitorial guys. They hate me no matter what. And I don't really have any problem with that. But I do hope to win over, and I do hope to give academic freedom to those people who can be won over and who would like to, like look at the sources. So many of their different little bugaboos can just be dismissed just by looking at the sources. Some of them depend upon historical lies, like the idea that slavery was some sort of a uniquely Western phenomenon. I've had students, I teach the Crusade. I just finished off teaching my class on the Crusades and stuff. And I've been teaching it for the last like 7-8 years. And really the reason why I've been teaching is because nobody in history department will touch it.
Interesting. Which is itself a problem.
Yeah. But, like every once in a while, when I just very casually mention Muslim slavery, like people will be like, what, nobody ever told us about that. Can you have a few words about that? And you're like, yeah, sure. I'll have a few words about that.
Which tells you a great deal about the status of the profession, and that no one knows that, even if you're studying. So something is should be widely known to anyone who's ever studied the field as that.
So one of the best antidotes, on an academic level, is actually just going to the sources and and acquainting people with the sources.
Sure.
Now that doesn't work with the seriously hardcore guys.
No, there's always going to be a core that you can't convince, and that's
some of those. Once years ago, I traveled with a postmodernist, and I after arguing with her for weeks and stuff, I just asked, "Do you believe that Julius Caesar actually existed?" And she couldn't say yes. So, I was like, okay, it's over. I can't rationally argue or discuss with somebody who cannot say that Julius Caesar existed.
Sure.
There's a limit to which I cannot go. And so, so sometimes those people, they exist. And, if Julius Caesar wasn't real, well, then that's fine.
Yeah, you're dealing with a level of nihilism at that point that you just tell them they don't exist themselves, I guess. Well, let me take a few questions from the audience. Let me encourage the audience to please send in your questions. An anonymous attendee asks, isn't the term Islamophobia an oxymoron?
I try not to use Islamophobia, but of course, the fact is that I am forced to because so many students bring it up.
Yeah. Is it in their vocabulary when they arrive in your class?
Yes.
Or do they learn it once they get to campus? So do they know it from high school sometimes, or?
Well, I actually don't know where they know it from.
Yeah.
But when I encounter them, it's definitely not possible anymore to the generation of students that I'm dealing with to actually say that Islamophobia is not a phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Which I would actually, that's where I would start, like from my generation, like I would have said, where is, what does exactly this term even mean? Why is it being utilized in this manner?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I usually, especially in my class on contemporary issues and so forth, I go over the different definitions of Islamophobia that are associated with like CARE and, well, many other places and stuff. And, we talk about the different contradictions and in some cases ludicrousness of, these definitions and so forth. And yeah, I mean, that's really as far as I can go actually on an academic level. I personally do not believe that this is a phenomenon that merits very much. I mean, it's not a phenomenon that I would really see as one that needs to be discussed extensively on an academic level. But the fact is that it is being discussed. Yeah. I might as well participate in the discussion.
It's taken for granted, is my impression. It's taken for granted by many of your colleagues and by many of your students. Well, let me Meyer Herzl Melmed asks, what are the main criticisms with Islam to which people object? What do they see that you or others would say that they object to, the primary problems?
Oh, wow. That's a huge question.
It is
So I
mountaintop.
think that
Just pick a
probably
couple.
the biggest objection that people have to me is methodology. The idea that Islam should be subjected to the same sort of criticism that Christianity or Judaism is subjected to.
Mhm.
And that's my point. I mean, that's my departure point is that, I'm my next door neighbor studies ancient Christianity. My other next door neighbor studies ancient Judaism.
Mhm.
I will deal with the Islamic sources in exactly the same manner as they deal with their sources.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do not find a strong need to protect anybody from anything. So, yeah, that's the particular point where I think I get critiqued the most, is because I don't start from, like the methodological point that actually Islam needs to be protected in some way.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, because there's certainly, that's ingrained in the academy, this protection of Islam from the type of rigorous study to which the Bible has long since been subjected, or any other ancient source.
Yeah, any other ancient source.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, that there's some sort of privileged position that Islam has or Muslims have. Now, I strongly, as I say, I maintain good relations with the Muslims here on campus, because they know that they can always turn to me for especially linguistic knowledge. I teach them the Quran, I teach them tafsir and so forth. And they can also ask me questions that their imams and their parents won't answer. So that protects me a lot of times from charges of Islamophobia, because essentially, so many of the people around have actually, been able to get answers out of me and stuff. Sure. So, yeah. But
Joseph, let me ask this. Joseph Spurl writes in, what is your opinion of Juan Cole's book on Muhammad, and does it exemplify the trends that you're discussing? His biography of Muhammad from a year or two ago.
Oh, yeah, I know.
You do.
Well, let's just put it this way. I mean, Juan Cole, I think, is, kind of a high priest of that direction. Yeah, I've got major problems with Muhammad. I'm sorry to say. I mean, not Muhammad, the prophet, but Muhammad.
Right, with Cole's book.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't use it to teach, to be absolutely blunt. I think that it's way too apologetic.
And one Cole being a professor at the University of Michigan.
What?
I'll just add for our audience that Cole teaches at the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just say that at least it's not anywhere near as apologetic as Karen Armstrong. So I think that there is actually a difference there. I use Cole's material for other different things. Like he has work on apocalypse that I've used and that I find valuable. And believe it or not, I actually do read his blog. Which again, I probably disagree with about 95% of it, but
sure.
He knows a lot of stuff. Yeah, he spins it in a way that I don't appreciate, but
Sure.
So.
Okay. Steve Orlow asks, do you see this situation among Middle East academics on campus filtering down to students that then results in the rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism on campuses?
On a personal level, again, I have not seen that here at Rice. But I've definitely read about it enough on campuses that I am never surprised when it does happen. Yeah, I think that the line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is extremely ill-defined, especially on campuses. And the inordinate, focus upon Israel is, something obviously that I have a major problem with. But as I say, on the Rice campus, I don't see that happening. I honestly, I've had extensive dealings with Muslim students and other students who could possibly be influenced by that, but I've never ever seen, that phenomenon, at least to me. There's been times where I've had to say, yeah, actually, I honestly have never really had any, anything like that here, but I've seen enough stuff, like on truly wacko campuses, that makes me wonder. So I don't doubt
Sure.
that it's a true phenomenon.
Sure. Mindy Stein writes with a question. She says, our Orthodox Jewish daughter went to Columbia, took an undergrad class in Islam, and was jeered whenever she got up to speak. And her professor showed an anti-Semitic film and told her she was not Semitic, so she does not belong in the Middle East. How do we get universities to hire more balanced professors in the Middle East department? And that, as you well know, I've heard stories like that more than once coming out of Columbia.
I'm not doubting it in the slightest.
Yeah.
My best friend is Orthodox Jewish, and she also is in our field and stuff. And yeah, I mean, she feels like she's probably in the last generation of Jews who could possibly actually go into Islamic studies. So I don't doubt the truth of that story. The truth is I would respond in that case with a lawsuit. Because something like that is so egregious and so disturbing that it should have been followed up, in my opinion, by either a Title IX sort of thing or, some sort of discrimination. Even in a place like Columbia, yeah, there has to be some law that you could actually deal with something like that. I've never seen anything like that personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raymond Stock, who teaches Arabic at LSU, writes in with a question. He says, fascinating discussion. Have you been attacked by any particular Western-based Islamic or Islamist organizations? And if so, who are they and what has happened as a result?
So many local mosques won't have anything to do with me.
Yeah. Larger or has CARE ever come after you, for example, or
no? CARE has never come after me. No.
Council on American Islamic Relations. Okay.
Yeah. No. CARE has never. A couple of years ago, I was giving a talk at a university in Minnesota, and I got attacked by some Muslim students who I was presenting on suicide attacks, and they refused to believe that there were a number of different fatwas that were issued by mainstream ulama during the 1990s and early 2000s that supported suicide attacks. They told me that that I was just making that up and stuff, and when I began to refute them and show them evidence that that was actually not the case, then they began to, kind of be pretty demonstrative, and eventually one of them actually had to be removed. I've had harsh debates like a couple of years ago. I had some serious debates and stuff in New York. Yeah, most of the other stuff that would have happened to me is mostly things that I kind of brought upon myself, by teaching or presenting in Muslim universities in Muslim countries. Where I've had some stuff happen, but yeah, I mean, in the end, I've always come out of it. So yeah,
sure, yeah.
But here, I wouldn't say that I've really had, as I say, the issue of trying to maintain close relations with the local mosques and stuff has been problematic. Most of them, I think, that think about me at all, consider me to be an Islamophobe. The only ones that I've been able to maintain relations with are groups like Ahmadis or Ismailis, that really aren't part of the mainstream.
Sure. Well, that leads to another question about if I can get it in, because we're running out of time, unfortunately. Stephen Gerzoff writes, do you ever have the occasion to make a distinction between radical and simply observant Muslims? And I'm extrapolating a little bit here from that is as their attitudes toward some of the more violent behaviors among the jihadis. Do you have different reactions among your students to, let's just say, acts of terrorism when they occur, or to the presence of those in our world?
Well, I definitely see that there's a difference between, what I call activists and quietist Salafis. Obviously the activists are the jihadis and so forth. And on a personal level, sometimes I've interacted with quietist quietist Salafis. And there's quite a number here. Or over at the University of Houston. University of Houston has much more of a Salafi MSA than we do here at Rice. And my colleagues over at the University of Houston sometimes have serious problems with them, like especially teaching Muhammad critically or, like early Islam and so forth. So yeah, I haven't really had, like, again, I'm talking about here in the United States.
Sure.
In the Arab world, I've run across a ton of jihadis who I've interviewed or talked to or had interaction with and stuff. And yeah, so I do think that there's a distinction. As for acts of terrorism, watching them vis-a-vis the students, it doesn't seem to me like I feel like that there's been a huge difference. I was in class on September 11th. I was actually teaching the Quran. How do you like that? So, and about a third of the students were Muslim. Yeah, there really wasn't that much difference.
Okay, well, unfortunately, this time has flown by, and we are at the end of the hour, bottom of the hour. But first, David, thank you so much for doing this. Perhaps we can have you back and kind of take up where we left off this time, because I would love to dwell on a little bit more and bore into the advice for students going into this again. Maybe you can sum it up by saying, pursue the truth and be strong, and just keep your eyes on pursuing the truth that the sources lead you to, and don't let the powers that be dissuade you. But I understand it's easier said than done too. So it's but it can be done, I guess. Let me do two things then. First, thank David again, our guest David Cook, for joining us today, and also remind our audience to stay tuned over the weekend for emails which will tell you about our upcoming webinars for the following week. And before I forget, David, is there any way that convenient way that our audience can see more about your work and learn about what you're doing?
Well, yeah, I guess I can just, maybe I could update my CV. You know what? I honestly
look you up at Rice then. So
actually, during the last years, I've been working mostly on the Crusade texts and stuff, and especially during the last 2 years during the Corona period, I've been working on the great history of the city of Damascus, which has come to take over my life entirely.
Okay.
But yeah, you can look forward to more apocalyptic material from me. I run an apocalyptic studies group that works on Muslim apocalypse.
Excellent.
And our goal is to publish. So
well, also just Google you at Rice University. They'll find your page there, as I did, and they'll be able to find what you're writing. So
yeah.
Well, again, thank you to all involved. Thank you, David. Thank you to our audience. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you Monday. Good night.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.